At our AGM this year, I shared this as part of my report, but I'm conscious that not everyone was able to make our AGM, and so I thought it's best for us to share some of this with you so that the whole church is aware of our future direction and some of the things we've been wrestling with and where we're going as a church. Our vision here at Kellyville Anglican comes from a mix of what we see is at the heart of God in the Scriptures and what is happening in the mission fields around us. Now, we try and summarise this by saying we want to be a church that changes the course of people's story with Jesus. But Kellyville is a suburb going through change. It's changing in the number of people. Over the next 8 to 10 years, we will see 50% growth. By 2030, there will be 200,000 people within a 5-kilometre radius of this building alone. And as I said, the change is coming quickly. It's in the next 8 to 10 years. It's also changing in demographics. The nations are coming to our doorstep, especially from India and from Asia. And it's also changing in what people think about Christianity. While the no religion box is up in the census, it's actually not as high as the state average. And our mission field around us is what drives and motivates us as a church. We want to be a church where you can bring your friends, you can bring your family, and where we can invite our community to meet and discover Jesus. And I applaud the vision of those who went before us to build this great facility. You can see from this article in a Southern Cross magazine in 2002 that Kellyville is described as an innovative centre. And quoting our own Ken Sangster from 8:30, it says, with a projected 80,000 people soon to be within its parish boundaries, Kellyville Anglican Church has unveiled innovative plans for a new church with future growth firmly in mind. There are tremendous opportunities to present the gospel of Christ to those people moving into the area. They say in that article there the population will swell to 80,000 people. And this site was chosen. And when construction began, you can see by some of these photos that it was basically farmland. You can see here some of the photos of the completed building. And in some of these further photos, you see the first day of celebration. They built something here that they could well and truly grow into. The membership of that time was around 120, so around 100 people on a Sunday. And they built a 300-seat auditorium, which, mind you, was designed to be extended at minimal cost, which we'll come back to. They had built a physical capacity to welcome the suburb and had a vision for the building to be used for future gospel proclamation. It's such a great story. And over the past 20 years of faithful gospel ministry, we have seen God grow His church here at Kellyville. And over the last couple of years, we have seen some quite expansive growth. Let me just share with you one set of numbers. You know how much I like numbers and showing you some stats, but here's one set of numbers. And these numbers are adults and kids numbers. And so in term 1, 2022, we averaged 290 adults and kids each Sunday. In term 1, 2023, we averaged 423 adults and kids. And in term 1 this year, 2024, we have averaged 533 adults and kids. That means in just 2 years, we have seen attendance at our church almost double, not quite, almost. Friends, what a joy and a delight. Now, our 10:30 service and the corresponding kids ministry is where we have seen substantial growth. We have felt the pinch in some of our kids' rooms consistently. We've felt pain around the car park and the capacity of the auditorium. And we've already done a few things to increase capacity. We purchased more chairs, and they were put to great use over the Easter weekend as we welcomed our biggest Easter services ever. We've tried to seat people better via some passive ushering with some cloths over chairs. We've encouraged anyone that serves on a Sunday at 10:30 to park off-site. Some families from 10:30 have made a transition to our 6 p.m. service with the move to include year 7 and 8 in our Sunday afternoon youth small groups. But on top of that, our evening service, compared to this time last year, has seen an increase of around 74%, for an average of 97 to an average of 169. Now, that's not purely because we brought year 7 and 8s in. It's a factor, but there's more going on in that story. As you can see, our church is experiencing great growth, and we're so thankful to God for it. And before us now is a chance to think about how can we build capacity for more and more people to come to church. And so today I want to share with you some of the options that are in front of us to increase our capacity, especially around the 10:30 service. And as we go through each of the options, you'll notice there's no perfect solution. Each option comes with advantages and disadvantages, and every single solution requires some sacrifice. And I want to acknowledge that any change is difficult. And so it's important that we firstly think about gospel principles before we think about practical options. So what gospel principles drive our decision making? Well, the first one is that church is about the gospel advancing, not our preferences. Jesus says that we need to take up our cross and follow him, deny ourselves. Paul says in 1 Corinthians that he wanted to know nothing more than Christ crucified. He says again in Philippians that if the gospel sounded out, he was happy, in that he would rejoice. All else was a nothing. Church is about the gospel advancing and going forward, not about our own personal preferences. The second gospel principle is that we need to secure our identity in Christ rather than any ministry or congregation. What matters ultimately on the day of judgment, when Jesus returns in glory, is that our lives are hidden with Christ, not that we went to this particular congregation or we were involved in that particular ministry. The third principle is that heaven and hell are real. There's an urgency for us to tell others the message of the gospel. Our time this side of heaven is short. And that means church is more like a rescue boat than a cruise ship. We need to be on mission and ready to go because of the realities of heaven and hell. And the fourth gospel principle in change is that life is brief. We only have this life to make gospel impact under God. None of us know how long we are given. So with all that in mind, here are the options that we've considered, and then when we get to the last one, that will be the one that we are moving forward with. The first option is to do nothing. That is, we end this discussion now, we ignore the problem, we just keep doing what we're doing, and we just leave it at that. Now, I haven't come across anyone who thinks this is a good idea. We will absolutely hit a ceiling soon, and we won't be able to continue to grow. And that will bring frustration for you and for us as a staff team. So we don't think that doing nothing is an option moving forward. Second option, maximise 10:30. We could look to significantly increase the capacity of this auditorium up to 400 by removing some of the offices and some of the parents' room. which, if you didn't know, were built into this space so that they could be easily removed and build a bigger auditorium. What this would cost us is some dollars. We would need to recoup some of that space for officers and parents' room, and perhaps we could put some demountables on the back grass. Demountables are expensive. Each one is probably around $150,000, depending on what you're looking for. And it's only a temporary solution. Not really looking to put a shanty town out the back on the back grass. And if we're going to spend some money, it would be better to try and do something that's more permanent and maintain some of our valuable green space out the back. So while this is a good idea, we don't have the kids' spaces that can cope with having an even larger auditorium. So even if we can push this back and we think this is a good idea and have more people come, then our kids' spaces won't cope. So this isn't an option for us right now, but it may potentially be one further down the track. Third option is we create a second family service, either in Sunday afternoon or Saturday afternoon. That is, we start a brand new service, say 4 or 4:30 p.m, and you can imagine the carrot for an afternoon service. I can imagine my face popping up on a Facebook or Instagram reel saying, hey, do you love your Sunday morning sleep-in? Do you love reading the paper, having a slower morning? Keep your Sunday morning, come to church in the afternoon. You can see something like that working well, or at least connecting with some people. The only problem with a Sunday afternoon family service is kids. It's appealing for many as an ideal, but I don't know if you have kids, if you remember what they were like in the late afternoon, early evening. At best, they were hard work. At worst, it was the terrors. It's a very tough time to run kids ministry and have the goal of that ministry that kids learn anything and that we do meaningful discipleship. There's a reason school finishes at 3 o'clock and doesn't run through till 5 p.m. And I don't know many churches that run a successful afternoon family church that caters for primary school students. In fact, I only found 1 or 2 across the diocese that were making this work. Most afternoon churches don't do primary, or at least start at upper primary at best. And so we're not convinced that this is the best way forward for us. The fourth option that we've investigated is perhaps we should pursue planting a church. Take a group of people, head to another location and plant a church there, with the idea that they would potentially maybe break away from us at some point. Now, church planting is great. It's new, it's exciting, and church plants often have greater evangelistic impact than established churches. But church planting is costly, not just in people resources, but financially as well. We would need to carve out one of our ministers here to say, we want you to go and church plant. And I'm not against church planting. I've done church planting in the past. They often reach new people. But before we do church planting, I think we should look to maximise what we have here to the best of our ability before we think about planting. And so we've taken planting out of the equation. This brings us to our fifth option, which is the one that we are looking to move forward on in the next 6 months. The option we are working towards is a second family service at 8:30 on a Sunday morning. This seems to us the most logical thing to do at this time. And this is how we've thought about it. And the numbers on this screen here are a little bit rubbery, but they give you an idea of the logic. You can see our service configuration now at the top. We have 8:30 and 10:30. 10:30 is our family service where people funnel in. It's averaging, let's say, 215 people. and that gives us some unused space, around 55 each and every Sunday. But if you move to a service configuration where we have 8:30 and 10:30 as family services, if we ask 50 people from 10:30 to go to 8:30 to join the faithful 70 people who are already there, you can see that that opens up a whole bunch more, from 55 spare seats to 255. This helps us to build significant capacity in two family services, not just on one channel. It will help 10:30 to not feel as full. But the cost here is people resources, more so than it is financial resources. And we need church as a whole to buy into this as the way forward. I have been able to visit most, but not all, 8:30 small groups to let them know that this is our plan. Now, naturally, there is some anxiety from them about what this means for 8:30. And we've worked hard as a staff team to listen to their concerns and how we will address these moving forward. But there will be some gains and losses for each of us through this as a church. And while 8:30 may feel the brunt of it, at some point we need to talk to 10:30 about the possibility of a chunk of them moving to 8:30 and making that their home. It may mean leaving behind some friends for the sake of moving. We will need people to think about serving in our kids' ministries moving forward. Both Naomi and Marion have been thinking very hard about how all this works. They've chatted to kids pastors who've done this before. They've gone to visit other churches to see how they manage two kids' ministries on a Sunday morning. Nathan is starting to think through what it looks like to bring two groups of people together, so they feel like one congregation rather than two sets of people in the one space. James is doing the hard work of managing the music, knowing that that's where the majority of the anxiety currently lies. And Andrew, as the pastor of 8:30, has come along to those visits to listen to concerns and ensure that 8:30 is well cared for during this time of transition. And 8:30 have been so very gracious as I've chatted to them about this. They are so keen for young families and families just in general to come and join them. They are genuinely a really loving and friendly bunch of people. And they have a lot to offer us as a church and any families that make that transition in the future. And I think there's also some opportunities here for us to pursue some genuine intergenerational ministry opportunities with older and younger people learning from one another in godliness. But I think most people at this point feel anxious and nervous around what this will all look like into the future. And this includes the staff team. But what we are all convinced of is this is the right way forward for us now. And on top of this, we know we will need to ultimately build some further capacity into our facilities. So while we have been working, has been mentioned in various reports at the AGM, we've been working with a project manager, Ian Thompson from the Midson Group, who has experience working with Sydney Anglican churches and was a recommendation from the diocese for us to use. We've been working with him on a master plan for our site that enables us to continue to grow. Now, why do we need to start working on this now? Well, if we continue to grow at the rate we are growing, and we want to get to the point where we want to make some modifications or do some building work, the lead times are significant. The lead times are long. It probably needs around 2 years of work through even a relatively small project. And I want to thank Parish Council, who met for 2 consecutive Monday nights to help us as a parish think through what to think and how we are going to move forward. Now, the only decision that we've made is that we should explore what it looks like to build, knowing that's something that we need to think through. The plans are still in process, and while we have been interacting with some drawings, because it's early stages and things may change, I don't want to show you something now that gets you locked into an idea of what it will be and then at some point we change where we're going and what that looks like. But when we are ready to show you some drawings and some pretty pictures, I really look forward to being able to do that. And it's always exciting to see some of the possibilities that could be done. But we're looking as a first priority in that space to increase our ability to welcome more kids onto our site and create some more permanent car parking spaces. But to build anything comes with a reasonably high price tag. And so alongside figuring out what do we need from a building point of view, Parish Council has also been discussing what can we afford as a parish. So as you can see, there's been quite a lot of work going in the background of church, especially over the course of term 1 this year. I'm thankful for the staff team who have taken the preaching load so I could focus in on these aspects of church. And remember, as we wrap up, when this place was ready for occupation, the people before us moved in with an enormous capacity to grow. There was a vision set to build capacity to welcome the 80,000 people moving in. Well, friends, what sort of church do we need to be to welcome 200,000 people on our doorstep? This is our time now as a church to think long term, to have the vision of what we could be under God, like those who went before us 25 years ago. But ultimately, it's not about us. It's not about us having a growing church. It's about the gospel. It's about Him who knew no sin, yet became sin for us. That's what this is about. Thanks so much for listening. If you have any questions you want to relay, feel free to send me an email or get in contact. I'd love to chat with you about it. Thanks so much.